I'm coming to the conclusion now at 40 that most of what we do is based on what's happening with our uterus.
Increíble, vamos. Fuera con presa, follar sin peligro.
She's like fucking without fear.
Your period and like what you go through in those days is really your history of that last cycle. Is it a really bad one? What were you doing? So I'm Leah, you guys know. I started yoga when I was 20, when I was finishing degrees in biology and women's studies. I actually met Joanne on my first trip to Mysore. I was 23. I remember meeting her and she was from Portugal. I had no idea where that was. And I was like so embarrassed that I wouldn't even admit, because I came from a very, very conservative American small town upbringing. But after that trip, I decided to leave the US and I never came back. Let's see. I'm coming to the conclusion now at 40 that most of what we do is based on what's happening with our uterus. Everything you do is based on if you're ovulating, if you're going to have your period, if you're going to go into menopause, if you're trying to get pregnant, if you're not trying to get pregnant. Are you guys conscious of that? I mean, I definitely didn't have that consciousness basically until now. And if someone had told me that, I think when I was younger, that would have been very helpful. Because everyone here is menstruating, I'm assuming. You're not menstruating. So in the Ashtanga tradition, they say 3 days is a ladies' holiday. Okay. So we kind of grew up with this ladies' holiday, no? But I can tell you my first trip to Mysore, I was 23. I came from a very athletic background. And I arrived to Mysore and they're like, oh, you can't practice on your ladies' holiday. I'm like, ladies' holiday? I just take an ibuprofen, are you guys crazy? I'm not going to travel around the world to practice yoga and then stop practicing for 3 days, on this trip. So definitely during my first, I would say 10 years of practicing, I always sort of practiced. I never stopped. But then when I got to catching my ankles every day, doing kapotasana and the ekapadas, then the story starts to get complicated. I realized that when I would practice through my period, the rest of the month was like shot. Like my energy wouldn't be as powerful, I think, as it could be, because I was going against, it's like going against the tides, right? You're not going to fight against the high tide. The high tide's coming, you're not going to make it go. So when I would practice during my periods, especially because, your uterus is here, it's right behind the sacrum. And as an advanced practitioner, as you start to do advanced asanas, you start really drilling this area of your body. Like, it starts getting very fragile. So you can't do bandhas when you have your period, right? So how could you possibly do advanced asana when you can't even protect that which is so exposed? And I'm very stubborn, so I practiced many years and I started to have a lot of pain in my sacrum. I also don't think pregnancy is helping that by any means. But what I noticed is that when I continue to practice because of whatever reasons, the time when you're ovulating, when your energy should really be expansive, I wouldn't feel so good. So it was like I wasn't really using the whole, because when you have your period, you have 4 cycles, right? It starts with the period. Then you have this build-up stage. Then you have ovulation. When you're in ovulation, it's like, here I am world, right? It's creativity, it's study, it's push the asana practice, it's find your limits, it's find a partner, it's have sex, it's, try to have an orgasm. And then when you go to the period, it's like, but all of us know we can't live like that, right? We're constantly pushing against these flows of our bodies, right? And I certainly was never explained any of that. I mean, did you all grow up in a household that someone said to you like, oh, ovulation period is a creative period. It's expansion, it's push the limit, it's, surf the biggest wave, it's to do your most intense practice. And then, right before your period, it's time to not socialize. Hide away, read your book, drink your tea, wait it out. No, Pipa, she calls her period her history. A historia.
História.
This is a common
Yes.
thing in Portuguese, right? She told me that
Kind
it's
of old, but
It's old. Yeah, but I'm starting to come to the realize that your period and like what you go through in those days is really your history of that last cycle. Is it a really bad one? What were you doing? Right? Do you have cramps? Are you hating your husband? Do you want to kill your children? Did you abuse, you know, but really, I can't work. I can't do anything. Did I push the entire cycle? And now I'm just like, I'm dead. So I really think that it is your story. So when you skip it, what happened? What did you do? It's constantly present, but it's sort of in a very dark box that nobody wants to deal with, but then in the end it has all this to give, right? And, you know, especially with the Ashtanga yoga practice, you know, there are a lot of practitioners, once they start doing third, fourth, they don't have their periods anymore, which I think is okay. I think it can be okay for a period of time if you're experimenting on the limits of your potential, your body, you want to know how far you can push, but it should be done with some consciousness, right? Because I'm not here to say like, oh, if you're not getting your period, you better, you know, of course. Holistic medicine is saying now that the period in your cycle is just as important as your blood pressure. It's a sign of your health. A woman who should be menstruating is not anymore. There's something happening. You know, to have that consciousness that your period's telling you how well you really are. Half the population doesn't have that. Right? And what I wanted to say is that when you have your period, your sacrum, all your joints, they get very loose. Doesn't anyone notice right before their period they get a little more flexible? Right?
Also pain in the lower back.
Yeah, pain in the lower back. So I started with like some soft pain in the lower back, but you know, I didn't really stop. And then like I arrived now and I'm like always fighting to not have pain in my lower back. Also, I'd like to say that when I went into Ashtanga, I had a lot of cramps before. And with the practice, I stopped having cramps. I mean, I also changed my diet and I changed my lifestyle. So I did stop having cramps. But then it's like, how much can you do that it doesn't get bad? You can't do too little, you can't do too much. And it's like, when, you know.
Where's the limit?
Yeah, where's the limit? And I think also it changes in age. When you're in your 20s, you can just go like full on and maybe your body's not so sensitive. But then you maybe get to your 30s and I'm like, oh, no. I mean, maximum fertility is around 25. And like I said, you don't need to have babies. You don't have to have your period. Do I think you should? You should at least have your period. I think that's probably, if you can, when you're in the age of having it. You know, my mom, she had menopause at 42, so I'm like really thinking a lot about this subject now because I'm like, oh, maybe I only have 2 years left of menstruation.
My mom just told me that she had with 39.
Yeah.
Really?
So,
Well, I'm 46 and it's still, everything is working
Yeah, but
exactly the same
it's
as
very
how
genetic.
it was
It's
working
very- they
when
say
I was
it's-
20. Don't
Yeah.
feel any difference at
but
all,
it is,
really.
yeah.
Sometimes a little more tired, but I don't have, it's
Yeah, but
stupid
until
because
it-
sometimes I forget the age I have.
Yeah.
Because I weight the same, everything is pretty much the same.
But I think until
I don't
it's-
even have white hair. Something.
A mí se me retiró con 45 años y fui la mujer más feliz del mundo.
She said she was the happiest woman in the world when she lost her period at 40. I think my mom was similar to. She was like, finally, I don't have to deal with that.
Increíble, vamos. Fuera con presa, follar sin peligro.
She's like, fucking without fear. That was her exact statement.
But maybe not so smoothly, because other problems also can come.
But I was saying, my daughter now starts to, our sons and daughters, they always have something to teach us. So she, for me, the period is like that, always very regular, so not much pain. I also always respected the times of not practicing, sometimes the whole week, so I don't practice at all.
That's wonderful.
The whole period. But my daughter, she collects the blood, and so she's making me kind of having curiosity about researching the sacred aspect, because she collects her blood and she offers to the earth, and it is a ritual she does every month. Is It's very beautiful.
Very nice, yeah. Very nice.
And there is a lot about
that
Exactly.
connection with
Yeah.
the cycles and then with the moon.
Yeah, I mean, do you, for example, see which moon that you're having your period? Do you
Yeah.
follow? So you, now I'm in the new moon, or now I'm in the full moon, and what is that significance? Because they said back in the day, of course, women were having the period in the new moon. They were ovulating in the full moon so that they could find a partner. Because the moon was bringing light. So in the night, you can find a partner in the night. So I mean, this is historic, you know. So it makes sense. Or they say, you know, sometimes urban women will have the switch. They are leading in the opposite because the energy is a little bit more opposite. You're not in the nature. So it is quite interesting to see when it switches and why. It's very important for me to have, I have a diary of all my periods, the day it comes, the day it finishes, so I have no confusion, and then like I start feeling, so then like when I start feeling really bad and I want to kill everyone, I'm like, okay, no, relax, attention, maybe just, it's not a big deal, I have to remember to like exaggerate. But also too, you know, I noticed that when cycles are a little more intense, it is definitely because maybe life is demanding too much of me and I don't have time to just take a break, you know. So it isn't like an imagination, it's really like a, yeah, I just don't, you know, whatever. I have a big family, I have a lot of, I want to do a lot of things. I like to surf, you know, I don't feel any physical, I'm 40, I can still surf, I mean, maybe I have to be a little more specific where I'm going to put all my energy. I cannot abuse like I did before. Like before I could just do everything and then surf and then make the family's food and work. And now it's like, okay, I can maybe not go completely crazy.
Yeah. But maybe because you get more wise also.
Yeah, also too, I don't want the repercussions. I don't want the repercussions. Because I knew them already and I'm quite aware of them. So if I push through my period and I practice, the lead class, the hand in my period, I want to do it anyway because then I can't fit, you know, I'm crazy like that. Then I have these repercussions and now I don't want them.